4 years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into 2 apartments. The house was known as the old boys' home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues, but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyway, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day while I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m. I had heard a small voice saying mom, mom, mommy. I had sat up in bed but didn't see anything, so I reached over my boyfriend trying to grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was still hearing the voice, but I couldn't feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get in our bed and I was reaching for her. There was nobody there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. Around 1 a.m. again, my dog had started to whimper at outdoor, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in a bed when someone lies down next to you? Where the bed pushes in and there is a warmth in your back. I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over, my boyfriend wasn't in the bed, and I felt the bed release pressure. Whatever was laying next to me has gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room, and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in that house. In high school, my friends and I were messing around with a Ouija board one night. We had done it before and nothing remarkable had ever happened. We usually did it to try and scare each other or our girlfriends. We all thought it was a joke. That night there was no one else home except the 7 of us, and we were all together around the board. One of the girls there wanted to try it. She had never done it before. This time was different. The board misspelled some of the words the same way every time. It gave answers that seemed really historically accurate for our town, things we neither knew or cared about. Long story short, the spirit claimed it was a 10-year-old boy who had died on the property in the 1800s and was buried there too in an unmarked grave. My friend's house was on a farm in the edge of town. We were all a little freaked out because the board had never been so detailed and consistent. However, we were still skeptical, and we were all assuming one of us was trying to scare the rest. Finally, my friend asked if the spirit could do something to prove he was there with us. It went to yes and then spelled out KNOCK. Then the planchette stopped moving. We just all stared at it silently, and then there was a rap on the window right next to us. The lights were on outside and there was absolutely no one out there. When I was in high school, I had a lot of these experiences. At the house my dad lived in at the time, it was really old, built in the early 1800s. There were plenty of times I'd be sitting in the living room and distinctly hear the cabinets opening and closing in the kitchen. It was just me and my dad that lived in the house, and you could clearly see when his bedroom door was shut and he was asleep, but still hear it. Normally my dad worked 7-3, but occasionally worked a PM or overnight shift. One night he was working until 11, I was 17 at the time. Around 8 or so, I'm sitting in my room playing Borderlands and think I hear footsteps coming from the living room, which was adjacent to my bedroom, and assume my dad's home early. Go back to playing Borderlands. I keep hearing the steps, so I pause the game and listen, and the footsteps are just slowly pacing back and forth between the living room and the kitchen in a steady rhythm. I laid in bed scared shitless and actually counted the steps. Every time it took 15 paces to the living room, 15 back to the kitchen. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. Had another situation at my mom's house, about 2 years prior to this. Out of nowhere my alarm clock would go off at midnight every night. I assumed it was busted and got rid of it. Fast forward 2 years, my mom gets another, brand new alarm clock for my room, also when I was 17. Suddenly, alarm goes off at midnight. I thought nothing of it, turned it off. Happened again the next night, and then my sister pointed out the old one I had that did it. So I checked and made sure no alarms were set, double checked at 11:56. Sure enough, 4 minutes later my alarm goes off. Freaked out, I threw it out. That next night was my dad's night to have me. I had a buddy of mine over and my dad was working that night. He left for work around 2 a.m. and my friend had brought over an iPod dock to listen to music on. Didn't have the clock set or anything, my friend knew nothing of the last couple nights. So about 2 minutes after my dad leaves, we hear an alarm clock coming from my room. I went in, and you know how if you just plug in a clock without setting it, the numbers just blink on and off. Well, it was doing that. As soon as I picked it up, the clock set itself to 12 o'clock and then just turned off by itself.